Being a Viking slave was basically life on nightmare mode. Imagine waking up every single day knowing you're just someone else's property. Not a person, not even a servant, but a walking, breathing piece of inventory. And your only purpose? Whatever your owner decided that day. No rights, no choices, just hoping your master didn't wake up feeling particularly cruel. Let's talk about how people even became thralls. That's what Vikings called slaves. And trust me, nobody was volunteering for this position. Most thralls were captured through brutal raids and warfare. There was nothing subtle about how Vikings acquired their human property. The number one way to become a thrall: be on the losing side when Vikings showed up. Raids weren't just about gold and silver. Human beings were among the most valuable commodities Vikings could bring home. While everyone talks about Vikings raiding monasteries for treasure, they were equally interested in grabbing monks, farmers, and villagers. Historical records from monasteries across Ireland, England, and France document raids where Vikings took numerous captives alongside valuables, transforming coastal communities into sources of both wealth and labor. River raids were especially efficient for slave-taking. Vikings would sail up rivers, hit settlements that never saw them coming, and be gone with captives before nearby villages even knew what happened. Contemporary accounts describe the terror these raids instilled in riverside communities, with Vikings striking with devastating speed and precision. The longship's shallow draft was perfect for these surprise attacks, allowing raiders to appear seemingly from nowhere and vanish just as quickly with their captured human cargo. Debt slavery was another path to thraldom. Can't pay what you owe? Congrats, you just became someone's property until you worked it off, which was basically never. And children born to thrall mothers? They were automatically thralls from birth, inheriting their mother's non-status like some twisted family tradition nobody asked for. Now, not all thralls had exactly the same experience. Your daily nightmare depended entirely on what kind of work you got assigned, and the difference could mean everything for your survival. Household thralls had it comparatively better, though better here just means less likely to die from exhaustion. These were the cooks, weavers, brewers, and general servants who kept a Viking household running. Women captives often ended up here, spending their days grinding grain, making clothes, or brewing ale. They at least got to sleep indoors and might occasionally eat decent food, which was leftovers from the master's table. But then there were the agricultural thralls who worked farms and livestock. These poor souls existed somewhere between beasts of burden and tools with heartbeats. They lived outside in crude shelters, worked from first light until they couldn't see anymore, and were fed just enough to keep them productive. Historical sources indicate that field thralls faced brutal conditions during intensive agricultural seasons, with many succumbing to the harsh conditions before new captives arrived to replace them. The hardest labor fell to thralls assigned to construction projects. Archaeological evidence from thrall graves shows bodies with worn-down joints, broken bones that healed poorly, and signs of malnutrition. Imagine spending your days hauling stones and cutting timber for massive projects like fortifications or longhouses, laboring under constant threat of violence while surviving on the barest sustenance. These people weren't just working hard, they quite literally worked to death. Some male thralls were kept as warrior slaves, forced to fight alongside their masters or serve as human shields. Imagine being valued so little that your main purpose was to catch arrows meant for someone else. Now that's a job description from hell. Then there were the specialized thralls, captured craftspeople like blacksmiths, jewelers, or boat builders whose skills were too valuable to waste on fieldwork. Their expertise bought them better treatment, but make no mistake, they were still property, and one mistake could send them straight to the fields. And then we have the concubines, women captured specifically as sexual slaves. Norse sagas don't sugarcoat this reality. Female thralls had zero protection from sexual exploitation, and their children became thralls unless their masters chose to recognize them. Some sagas describe thrall women being passed around during feasts as entertainment. If that sounds horrific, it absolutely was. Daily life as a Viking thrall? Pure misery with extra steps. Your day started before dawn because thralls had to have fires lit and food prepared before their masters woke up. No cozy beds either. Household thralls slept on benches or the floor near the hearth, while field thralls made do with straw pallets in outbuildings shared with animals. Food? Hope you like scraps and porridge. Thralls ate whatever was left after everyone else finished. Archaeological evidence shows thrall diets consisted mainly of gruel, with occasional fish bones and the worst cuts of meat. Protein deficiency was so common that thrall skeletons show distinctive signs of malnutrition. And clothing? You got the bare minimum. Rough wool tunics and maybe, if you were lucky, worn-out shoes. No fancy Viking brooches or colorful garments for you. Many thralls worked with just enough covering to protect them from the elements, especially in summer. Let's talk about punishment, because Vikings weren't exactly known for their gentle correction methods. Basic disobedience earned you a beating. Running away. That could get you hamstrung. The tendons in your legs sliced so you'd never run again. Archaeological excavations have discovered various restraints in Viking contexts, including iron collars and shackles that were likely used to control thralls and prevent escape. Particularly troublesome thralls might be hobbled with heavy weights, their mobility severely restricted. Archaeological finds include what appear to be restraints, iron components that would have made movement difficult and escape nearly impossible. Imagine trying to move through your daily tasks with such burdens attached to your body. For the ultimate punishment, written accounts suggest thralls could face death as part of religious ceremonies. Ibn Fadlan, the 10th century Arab traveler who witnessed a Viking funeral on the Volga River, described a slave girl being sacrificed to accompany her master in death. While such accounts must be approached critically, they suggest that in some circumstances thralls' lives could be ended as part of religious or burial practices. Archaeological evidence from various Viking Age burial sites shows that some graves contained multiple bodies, with debates continuing about whether additional remains represent sacrificed individuals or family members. Legally, thralls had about as many rights as the average sheep, which is to say, none whatsoever. Viking law codes like the Gragas from Iceland were crystal clear. Thralls were property, not people. If someone killed your thrall, they owe you compensation for property damage, not for taking a human life. The price? About the same as a good cow or a couple of horses. Your master could kill you for almost any reason with little consequence. The sagas and legal codes reveal a world where thralls could face severe punishments for even minor offenses. While specific stories in the sagas should be read critically as literature rather than pure historical record, they consistently depict thralls as vulnerable to their owners' whims. These weren't considered crimes, just property owners doing whatever they wanted with their possessions. Thralls couldn't own property, couldn't testify in court, and couldn't marry without permission. They had no legal protection against abuse, sexual assault, or even murder. In Viking society, they existed entirely at the mercy of their owners. Now, there were a few ways out of thraldom, though none were guaranteed. Freedom could be purchased if a thrall somehow managed to save money, which was nearly impossible since they weren't paid for their labor. Sometimes thralls were freed as a reward for exceptional service or loyalty, especially if they'd saved their master's life. An owner might free a thrall in their will, especially if the thrall had served them for many years or bore them children. But even freed thralls, called freedmen, weren't immediately equal to freeborn Norse. They remained tied to their former master's household, with obligations to work certain days or provide ongoing service. Full integration into society could take generations. Some desperate thralls sought freedom through resistance. While large-scale thrall rebellions are rare in historical records, there are documented cases like the revolt led by the thrall Duftak in Iceland. The sagas occasionally mention thralls who acted against their masters during moments of opportunity or escape during times of chaos. In Laxdæla saga, we meet Melkorka, an Irish princess taken as a thrall who uses silent resistance and later manipulation to improve her situation and secure a better future for her son. The most common form of resistance was likely escape. Some thralls fled to the wilderness or stowed away on ships. Others may have been helped by sympathetic free people or by Christians who opposed slavery. But successful escape was rare, and recapture meant severe punishment or death. The decline of Viking slavery was a complex process influenced by multiple factors. As Scandinavia gradually Christianized from the 10th century onward, attitudes toward owning fellow Christians as slaves slowly began to shift. Economic changes also played a critical role. As societies developed more sophisticated trading networks and agricultural systems, forms of tenancy and wage labor gradually became more common than outright thraldom. This transformation didn't happen overnight. Historical evidence suggests that slavery persisted in some form well into the medieval period across Scandinavia, gradually evolving into different forms of unfree labor. By the late 12th century, traditional thraldom as practiced during the height of the Viking Age had largely transformed, though unfree servitude continued in various forms. This is a stark reminder of the brutality behind the often romanticized Viking culture. We admire their ships, their craftsmanship, and their exploration, but we can't forget that their society was built on the suffering of countless enslaved people who never got to tell their own stories. Their experiences didn't make it into the heroic sagas or get carved into runestones. Instead, they lie in unmarked graves, their existence only hinted at in archaeological evidence and brief mentions in texts written by their oppressors. So next time you see a cool Viking show with warriors in awesome helmets sailing amazing ships, remember the invisible people who made that lifestyle possible. The thralls who cooked the food, tended the farms, built the ships, and raised the children, all while living lives of unimaginable hardship. If these forgotten stories hit you like they hit me, take a moment to reflect. And if you want to hear more about the hidden sides of Viking history, you know what to do. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.